All right, so I'm here with Scott McLarty. He's the national media coordinator for the Green Party, of which I'm, full disclosure, I'm a member. I became aware of Scott's work through this piece in Counterpunch. Was published back in the beginning of February, called Political Revolution and the Third Party Imperative, which is really a great piece. I'm going to link to it, particularly for people who are interested in what Bernie Sanders is calling a political revolution, and the notion that how do these revolutions happen? You know, can a revolution happen within the confines of the Democratic Party? And I think a lot of people on the left, where there's a real schism between people who are following Bernie Sanders and just sort of kind of unaware or blind to the fact, or too young to know this dynamic of what does these political parties, Democratic and Republican Party, what do they represent as establishment organizations, who basically runs and controls them, and why that makes it difficult to really create a revolution within something like even the Democratic Party. And so I guess that's what you were getting out of this piece, but could you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. I think it's a good idea to look at a little bit of history. First of all, revolutions take place in a variety of ways and through a variety of means, and not always violent, depending on guns and street fighting. Often the revolution takes place in people's minds and people's consciousness and their actions, but always it requires some kind of mass mobilization. In the U.S., we've had some very important changes. You might even say they're revolutionary to a certain extent, and I'll list some of them. They include things like the abolition of slavery, the granting of the right to vote to women, workers' benefits and the 8-hour workday, and fair labor laws, including the elimination of child labor, public schools, unemployment compensation, programs like Social Security and Medicare that improved all of our lives. And I think these were parts of a kind of a revolution that took place in various ways and at various levels. But the important thing that I want to bring up here is that they did not occur from the two ruling parties. These changes were led by well-organized alternative parties, and in all of these cases, decades later, the Democrats and Republicans, the leading parties, came around and adopted them. So third parties, alternative parties, have been very much an imperative on the landscape of the political landscape of the United States, and they are no less an imperative right now. We're facing some very big problems in the 21st century, some huge crises, and at the top of the list, of course, is climate change, but also this creeping corporate oligarchy, the concentration of wealth and power among the 1%, and along with that, the shrinking of the middle class and the shredding of the social safety net for the poor. And on top of that, we also have this growing national security state, mass incarceration state, and of course, endless war. And both of the establishment parties are responsible in various ways for these crises, and neither of the big establishment parties is capable of solving these problems. That's why we need a third party imperative. That's why we need a third party. And it's imperative because the movements to effect such change need an electoral component. So
briefly, you know, the history of third parties in America, for people who are unfamiliar, I mean, you know, people, you know, unfortunately, I think with the advent of television, people's scopes of imagination have decreased quite a bit, and the notion of history has been pretty much erased, I think, just from modern people and modern thinking. And to think that there's actually an alternative between the Democratic and Republican parties, most people, you know, and aside from what Jill Stein says about lesser evilism and all that, that there's actually a history to third parties in this country.
Well, of course, there are some very sharp differences between Democrats and Republicans, and also there are contingents within those parties that don't go along with the status quo. They don't go along with the so-called accepted wisdom of their platforms. However, overall, both of the parties tend to agree on the premises. To give a good example, we now have the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Democrats support it. They want to keep it going, and Republicans very strongly oppose it. But yet notice that on both sides of this debate, Democrats and Republicans agree that private for-profit insurance companies must remain in control, largely in control of our health care, while the Green Party and some Democrats, including Bernie Sanders, support a single-payer plan that also called Medicare for All, that eliminates the need for private insurance and instead would affect a much more cost-effective and a universal program of healthcare, making healthcare a right for everybody. So that's a sharp difference between the Green Party and the mainstream of the Democratic and Republican parties. I mentioned history before with this, and some very old history, but there is some more recent history too. We have had mini revolutions, incipient revolutions in the United States over the past generation. And what I'm talking about now is protest movements such as the anti-globalization movement that began in 1999, the anti-war protests in opposition to the Iraq War. More recently, the Occupy Wall Street movement, and of course, Black Lives Matter, which is still going on. The other movements I mentioned didn't last very long. There is something that's continuing in the Occupy movement, but protest movements have a lot of trouble sustaining themselves. They require a lot of energy, a lot of dedication that puts people out into the street, but they often don't affect very rapid change, and so people. Now, that's one reason people get discouraged and they give up and they move on to something else. In the case of the anti-war movement, the election of Barack Obama killed that, thanks to the illusion that President Obama would be an anti-war, would run an anti-war administration. Of course, we know that that's not true. That wasn't even true before he was elected.
Right. Yeah, he was
awarded what we really need.
Yeah, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, though. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in advance.
Yeah, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize based on campaign propaganda, basically. So anyway, what we really need are the mechanisms to keep these movements going, to establish a kind of a permanent institutional way to make sure that their goals get enacted. And that's why a third party, an alternative party like the Green Party, is so important, or is the word that I use is imperative.
Right. So you mentioned the healthcare, and that Green Party and Sanders positions are fairly similar on calling for Medicare for all. And in fact, a story just came across now, the New York Times website. Left-leaning economists question costs of Bernie Sanders' plans, and particularly about his healthcare plans, and his plans to pay for it. And his plans to pay for it, of course, are to raise taxes on middle class, saying you'll pay $500 more and get $5,000 in healthcare benefits is the rough metric that they've been throwing out. And this has been, in this piece, questioned roundly about the accuracy of that. I know when Jill Stein speaks about this, who's running the Green Party for president, or will be running for president of the Green Party, she mentions the fact that there is a whole other budgetary area which could come from, being the military budget. And that's a piece that probably wouldn't require, now I'm not an economist, but I mean, might not require additional taxes on middle class or individuals, but there's so much waste happening there. But that's an area of budgeting that Sanders doesn't seem to address?
Well, one of the criticisms of Senator Sanders is that although he initially voted against the Iraq War back in October 2002, he voted in favor of raising the military budget several times. So that's one sharp difference between the Green Party and Bernie Sanders. To get back to healthcare very quickly, just briefly, the way it would work is that people who pay an enormous amount of money for health coverage, for private health coverage, and very often for out-of-pocket health care, they would see all of that drastically reduced, because that would be replaced by a health care tax that would be very much smaller than what they now pay for things like insurance, health insurance, prescriptions, treatment, all sorts of things. And so in that sense, most Americans would make out very, very well economically under a single payer plan. And furthermore, if we look at the percentage of the gross domestic spending in the United States that goes to healthcare, that's about 17%, somewhere between 17 and 18%. In countries that have a single payer system or something like single payer, it's somewhere between 10 and 11%. So we would make out very well economically. We would save billions and billions of dollars with a Medicare for all single payer system. And if you want more information about this, I recommend going to the website of Physicians for a National Health Program. That's pnhp.org, Physicians for a National Health Program. The Green Party agrees. We could eliminate lots of military spending. We could end this pattern of aggressive military action, invasions and assaults against countries that have not provoked us, that have committed no assault against the United States, and we would save hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. Unfortunately, we have we don't just have endless war, we have what goes along with it, which is a permanent wartime economy. And that's hugely wasteful. And so much of that money could be going to humane purposes, and of course we could also lower taxes on people across the board. Green Party supports a very progressive tax system that grants relief to working people and requires that the wealthy, the 1%, pay their fair share in taxes.
One of the things, and I wrote a piece about this recently, similarly about this the political revolution that Bernie Sanders is promoting, and the essence of what is the revolution? Like, what does a revolution look like in his context? And what I found is that basically it revolves around sending money to his campaign, voting for him, and then if he's fortunate enough to become president, then people call their congressperson to agitate them for change. And to me, that was a little bit, I found that all a little bit bizarre, frankly, because I know congresspeople answer to money necessarily. I mean, that's the problem now. It's that, we can call them all day long, but I mean, it's really money that speaks. And on one hand, can you say that money's tainted the system, but then, everyday Jack is going to call up their senator or congressperson and say, here's what we want. We don't have any money, but, we're going to call you all day. What I wrote about, and I think this is something that I heard from Jill, is that why don't we seed lower level offices with candidates and actually build a revolution from the ground up? Why don't we start seeding offices from the lower from mayors and city councils and then build your way up, and don't rely on a top down orientation to really create change.
Well, you're exactly right that about the limitations of the political revolution as preached by Senator Sanders. A revolution isn't going to take place, doesn't really mean anything if it simply ends the day after he is not nominated for the to be the Democratic candidate for president. And of course, it should not end if he is not elected president either if by some chance he is nominated as a Democrat. The grassroots part of it is absolutely essential, and in fact, that's what the Green Party is dedicated to doing. We run candidates at all levels for school board, for city council, for county commission, for mayor of cities and towns, and of course for state legislature and for members of Congress. In my opinion, state legislatures are absolutely crucial. They're very important for the Green Party, and I hope we get some good wins this year. And when you look at it that way, you realize that the presidential campaign for something like the Green Party is actually sort of ancillary. It's kind of subordinate. It's very important, but it serves a very specific purpose that's beyond question of winnability. The Green Party presidential candidates help state Green parties achieve ballot access all around the country, and that is a very big hurdle in many states because of ballot access laws designed by Democrats and Republicans to privilege their own candidates but impede alternative party and independent candidates. So that is that's something that requires a lot of work to overcome. Our Green candidates for president promote the Green Party's platform and principles and goals and nationally in ways that statewide and local candidates cannot. And this is very important. Our presidential campaigns promote our state and local candidates who are running for public office. A lot of people have said, well, why doesn't the Green Party just endorse Bernie Sanders? Because there is some overlap in our platforms. Well, the truth of the matter is that the Green Party considers itself and its own growth to be absolutely essential, and Bernie Sanders, whether he's endorsed or not by the Green Party, he is not going to promote the Green Party's platform. He's not going to promote the Green Party's candidates.
I think I read it was maybe Chris Hedges who said that in Vermont, actually, Bernie Sanders is an impediment to the Green Party getting ballot access and getting momentum within Vermont.
Chris Hedges doesn't know what he's talking about. He's completely wrong. Bernie Sanders was instrumental in the progress of the Progressive Party in Vermont. He also doesn't know what he's talking about when he talks about the Green Party. He is ill-informed.
Yeah, his piece today.
I admire him in lots of ways. I agree with a lot of his criticisms of the two major parties and of certainly of the corporate oligarchy. But he doesn't really understand what's going on among alternative party movements.
Yeah, his piece today was pretty harsh. I'm sure you read his piece in Truth Dig today, but he had some pretty harsh digs at the Green Party. And then, lastly, there was this piece that has been kind of going around the internet by, do I have it here? The woman who wrote The New Jim Crow and her piece in The Nation about...
Alexander, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And that was really illuminating. That was one of the best pieces, really explaining factually what happened. And went through this whole sort of this whole history of what happened in the Clinton administration, particularly to the black community. And it's really something, I'm going to link to it as well as your piece, that people should read. And then at the end she said, I want to be clear that this is not an endorsement for Bernie Sanders. What she left kind of wide open there was that, she wasn't saying what she was endorsing or what she was suggesting, but she was kind of just, basically her whole statement was that the Democratic Party is not equipped to deal with these issues right now.
Well, she's correct, and there remains a lot of delusion among liberals, among progressives, that the Clintons have been beneficial to us, and if an objective examination of their record in public office proves otherwise, they've been actually quite damaging. They've helped make the Democratic Party sort of a Republican light party. So we have two Republican parties. We have Republican light and a Republican dangerous extremist.
Right.
And that should not be our choice. We shouldn't have a choice limited to two such parties. We should have multi-party democracy. As I like to say, a two-party status quo is only one step away from a one-party state. And the only real democracy is multi-party democracy, where people have the ability and the encouragement to support whichever party, whichever candidate best represents their ideals and interests.
Right. So finally, I don't want to, and I often come on because, my Sanders supporting friends are really passionate about Bernie. I mean, it's caught wind in a way that, feels to me that a cult of personality reaction in a way that logic sort of gets put down in the back, and, we're going with the emotion of it, and the sort of thing that just sort of starts to roll. And, I have no bone to pick with Bernie Sanders. I mean, I find criticism with the fact that he promotes himself as an independent and sort of a democratic socialist, but really, finds partnership with the Democratic Party for his political, for his political purposes. He's sort of, and as far as I'm concerned, you can't sleep in two beds at the same time. You can't be an independent and be a Democrat. Somehow he's kind of pulled it off for himself in that way. But that's the reason when my friends ask me, why don't you support Sanders? He supports so much about what you care about. It's basically that, my ideology or philosophy is not with that party. It's with third parties, particularly with the Green Party, and particularly for the reasons that you've been elucidating, that, it's all become, they're all sort of, it's a two-headed monster with maybe, big oil supporting the Republicans and Wall Street supporting the Democrats, and in the end, they all win out no matter who wins. And how can somebody like a Sanders, how much can he really change in that environment? So, so to me, how do people find out more about the Green Party? How do they get involved in the Green Party? Because, as we know, there's going to come to a point when the Sanders campaign comes to an end, and that he says, now we need to go and support Hillary, and young people will feel shocked. Maybe older people will remember this happened to us before, and then they're going to need some place to go. And then, what happens then?
Well, the good thing about Bernie Sanders' his campaign is that he has proved that millions and millions of Americans are unhappy with the two establishment parties, the programs of the two establishment parties, that they want something much different. Even though Bernie Sanders is operating now within the confines of the Democratic Party. And that is good news. That's good news for the Green Party. But that good news has to translate into something after the nomination takes place. And it's still very likely now that Bernie Sanders will not be the Democratic Party nominee because of so many obstacles that the Democratic Party has thrown up against someone like him, beginning with the superdelegate system. I hope that people who support Bernie Sanders understand that they can keep the political revolution going after the nomination, after the general election, by doing many things, including taking a look at the Green Party, getting involved with the Green Party, using the Green Party as a basis to to push this agenda, the political revolution agenda. Now, the Green Party exists all over the country. We are in most states. In 2012, Jill Stein was our nominee. She was on the ballot in 37 states, including the District of Columbia, where I live. And those ballots were seen by 82% of voters. So in other words, if enough people in all those states voted for Jill Stein, she could have become president. If people want to learn more about the Green Party, I recommend, first of all, going to our national website, which is gp.org. GP is in Green Party. But more importantly, get to know your state and local Green parties. Get to know who is active in the Green Party in your area. That's the best way to get involved. That's the best way to have an effect in the Green Party, is to begin locally. We do have a national party, of course. I work for the national party. It's a little bit skeletal because most of the action takes place at the local level, and in some instances, that local action has been very, very successful. It's been very important. To give a good example, Gail McLaughlin was mayor of Richmond, California, a small city of about 100,000 people, and she is now a member of city council because of term limits there, so she couldn't run for mayor again last year. But while she was mayor, she did two very, very important things that absolutely enraged the 1%. The first thing she did was she forced Chevron to pay punitive fees for pollution that it was responsible for. The second thing, this made national news, is that thousands of people in Richmond were facing the loss of their homes thanks to foreclosures that, as a result of the subprime mortgage crisis and the economic collapse that took place in 2008. Well, Mayor McLaughlin did something about that, and she came up with a very interesting scheme to help people stay in their homes. She used her power of eminent domain to seize those homes, and in seizing them, told the residents that they could continue to live there. So the people did not lose their homes. And of course, the banks that were trying to follow through on those foreclosures were utterly enraged. And I think that's an idea that really only could have come out of someone who was elected as a Green,
right,
and who does not take corporate contributions, does not kneel before the CEOs and lobbyists of Wall Street and big oil and big insurance, et cetera, et cetera.
And then, of course, we had the example in Seattle of a socialist city council member actually initiating the $15 an hour minimum wage, which is now catching wind, which in itself is remarkable. Yeah.
And that's why people should take alternative party candidates and the parties themselves very seriously and check them out, and open yourself up to learning that that we don't have such a restrictive range of choices.
Right. Well, great. Thanks so much. This has been really great, and I'm going to a link to your piece and some other information about the Green Party on the article here, so people can get more information, find out what's going on. So thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And again, people can learn about the Green Party at gp.org, and they can look up their state parties at that website too.
Great. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.